Hello, welcome to my channel. I am Michelle and this is Michelle Creates. In this video, I'm going to be using the knitting loom and I'm going to create a flat panel. I'm using a 24 peg round loom. I'm going small because I want all the stuff that I'm going to show you guys, I want to be able to get it in a short, timely manner. Okay, so I'm using chenille yarn. It's 100% polyester. I'm using scrap yarn, so I don't use my really good brand new, because I'm not making a project. I'm just teaching you guys how to do this. First thing I'm going to do is create a single knot, which I already did, and I'm just opening the hole up a little bit. Single knot, and I'm going to attach it to the starting peg on the front of the loom and pull that just tight enough so it doesn't pop off. And first thing I'm going to do is an E-wrap cast on. This video is not the tutorial for the E-wrap cast on. I have another video that I made that's in a very slow for ultimate beginners. So if you are not sure how to do the E-wrap, you're going to want to go check that other video out. It explains and it has tips and techniques and stuff in there. So I'm a right-handed person, I'm moving to the right, and I am just doing my E-wrap for the cast on, and it goes up to the last peg here. I'm not connecting my yarn to the two pegs right here because I'm going to do a flat knit, flat panel. And I'm pushing down my first row. Now, I already wrapped the first peg, so I'm going to skip that first peg and I'm going to the left now. This is the second row for my cast on, and I'm just going to wrap all the pegs except for that first one. E-wrap goes behind the peg and around to the front. Just a quick reminder. And I'm going all the way to the first peg. Now I'm going to knit over. I like to work from under to knit over. The yarn stays on my hook better, and my loops seem to be a little bit more consistent in size when I go from under. Working with the chenille yarn, because it's fuzzy and it is bulkier, it tends to stick a little bit. So you do have to tug or pull just a little bit more than you would acrylic yarn. All right, there is my cast on. Now I'm going to want to push my cast on down to make room for my next row. All right, what I'm going to do now is create a border. This will be for the bottom edge of my knit panel, and this will creates a really cute border for it, but it also prevents your project, your knit, from curling up. All right, what I'm going to do is the first row that I create, I'm going to do the E-wrap all the way around. Okay, this is row number 1 of a 2-step process for my border. Okay, again, that's the E-wrap. And knitting that over. The reason why I'm not editing this or cutting this out and having it just zoom like to the very end is because I want you guys to see how long it takes and possible things that may happen along the way that I fix or alter or tweak, and it gives you a realistic idea of how long something would take. Okay, that is row 1 of my E-wrap knit stitch. Now I'm going to leave all the yarn up. Okay, leave that top row up. Next thing I'm going to do is create number 2 for my border. This is going to be, I'm going to do the purl stitch. Okay, so skipping that first peg again, always skip the first peg. Take your working yarn and you're going to go underneath the row now. That was already looped on. So here we go, purl stitch. I'm going to take my hook and go from the top and hook that first loop on the peg. I'm going to go underneath that yarn that I placed in front of the peg and catch that with my hook, pull it up and create a loop. Okay, take my hook out. Now I'm going to take my fingers and grab the loop that's actually on the peg. I'm going to pull that off the peg. Then I'm going to take that loop that I created and put that on the peg. And then pull my working yarn a little bit. Pull that loop tight, the stitch tighter. Okay, you want to make sure those don't fall off. Now go in front again, underneath the yarn, underneath the top stitch there, or loop. Grab my hook, go from above, underneath, grab that yarn, pull it to create a loop, pull off the loop that's on the peg, put the new loop that I made on the peg, and tug at your yarn just to have it tight enough so it can come off with your hook, but not too tight where you can't get it off at all. All right, continue working the purl until you get to the end. This is row 2, and what I am creating for my border is actually, it's called a garter stitch. Garter with a T. And it's a 2-row process to create that. And the reason why it stays flat, that border, is because you have these stitches are going kind of the opposite. You've got the knit stitch basically facing one way. The purl stitch is facing another way. So it creates a nice balance for your yarn and it does not curl. Okay, the yarn is always, the working yarn is always underneath. Take my top loop, catch the bottom one, pull it through, take the yarn off the peg, and put the new loop on. Tug just slightly to tighten that up. And this is the whole row 2. Working to my left. Doesn't matter how big the loop is, make it big enough so you can see it, but you'll tighten it up after you get it on the peg, so don't worry about making the loop too big. You want to make it just the right size that you can handle it and be able to work and get it on the peg. Okay, that one wanted to go on top. I need it to go under it. Chenille yarn, a little bit harder because of the fuzz of it. It makes it harder to pull through. So it does slow you down a little bit compared to acrylic. The nice thing about chenille though, is when you go to put your hook with your yarn, you're not pulling strands apart. Acrylic has individual strands that are twisted to create that thickness, and sometimes your hook will catch in between them. Not with chenille. It's all one piece with fuzz. All right, I'm almost to the end here. Make sure your loops don't get twisted. Sometimes the chenille, because it's either in a ball or in the skein, it'll have a little bit of a curl to it. Make sure that those loops are flat so they all look the same. All your stitches look the same. See how that wants to twist? Make sure that stays open so they're all the same. All right, I'm at the last loop. Make sure you pull that one up. Tends to want to go down. Get your working yarn underneath that top loop that's on there. And that is the first row of your garter stitch. All right, so depending on how big your project is will depend on how many rows of the garter stitch you actually want to do. Because this is a smaller panel, I'm only going to do one more row of the garter. If you're doing a throw or bigger, you're probably going to want to do at least 5 garter rows. 5 to 8. But for this purpose only, the demonstration, I'm just going to do 2 just to move it along. I'm noticing here now as I push my loops down, there's a loop that did not go on the peg. I'm going to turn it this way. So I'm going to want to grab that and fix that. That happens with the purl stitch sometimes. So eyeball your work before you don't move too fast. Kind of check things over before you go on to the next row. It's very difficult to fix a mistake with the loom knitting. So you kind of want to take your time, especially when you're first starting out. All right, now I'm going to create the next row of another garter stitch. So we're going to go back to going to the right, and I'm going to do the first row of my garter is an E-wrap, a knit stitch. Okay. All pegs are wrapped. I want to hold this down so my yarn doesn't come off the pegs. It will unravel. And grab your bottom loop and yarn it over. And we're going to leave that row up there because I'm going to do a purl stitch row next. And so I want my yarn ready to go. And once you get your groove, you can tell it moves fairly quick. Get a little system down. Okay, that's row 1 of the garter stitch. That was an E-wrap, the knit stitch. Now going back to the left, I'm going to do purl. So I put that working yarn under, okay, under my top row. Grab the top row, pull it through, make a loop, pull the loop off, and put your new loop on and tug to tighten a bit. And here we go, all purl. Hopefully you're able to work along with me. The great thing about the videos is that you can pause, rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to do. And also, guys, if I'm doing anything in my videos that you have a question about, just leave a comment, ask a question. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. And also, if there's a part where you need me to review again, I can make another follow-up video on those things. I am more than happy to do that. So just let me know. Also, my video so far, my content is basic stitches, beginner, ultimate beginner stuff so far. I'm not doing any projects. Those things I will add later. So I'm just trying to cover right now in my videos all of the things you need to know first, including terminology, before I start showing you projects. Okay, again, I'm still doing the purl stitch. This is row 2 after my E-wrap knit stitch. I'm doing all purl now, and I'm on the second row of the garter stitch. Okay, last one. Make sure you do that one. Grab from the top, catch the bottom one, pull it through, make a loop, pull it off the peg, and put the new loop on. Tug slightly. All right, I'm going to push those down. Now I have my bottom border done. Okay, garter stitch is done. Now I'm going to create basically my afghan, but I want to put my border on my edges on the side. I don't want the sides to curl in. I want my fabric or whatever, my project, to be nice and flat. So when I go to fold it, the corners are nice and square, the edges are, everything is even. All right, this next row, I'm going back to the right. I'm going to E-wrap, yes. I'm gonna E-wrap everything again. Again, make sure you wrap from behind and then go around to the front. And do the last peg, holding it with my fingers so this does not unravel. Chenille is spongy enough. It will definitely unravel if I'm not holding that working yarn down. And I am knitting over all of these pegs. The knit stitch, the E-wrap, will always go first in the order of how you're creating your border. Okay, now I'm going to go back the other way. I left my yarn up, my row up, because the first, okay, depending on how many rows of the garter stitch you did on the bottom, more than likely you're going to want to do the same amount on the sides to keep it, the border square. You can go less if you want, but the bigger your panel is, the more you want to have, because the weight of it would, you want to have a little bit more of that border to hold that nice and flat. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to, let's say I did 4 rows of the garter stitch here on my first, on my edge here. So I'm going to do 4 purl stitches, counting the pegs 1, 2, 3, 4. You may want to use markers to do this, so as you're working along, this will kind of alert you to go, oh, now I'm on the peg, or the purl stitch, the peg of the purl stitch. I just use a Sharpie and just make a little tick mark. So I always skip my first peg. Okay, I'm back at the beginning. I always skip my first peg. I'm going to go to the front and I'm going to create 4 purl stitches. Now, pretend I did the first one, okay? That you have to count that peg as 1, but I didn't make that purl stitch because I always skip that peg, if that makes sense. So here's 2. Here's my 3rd purl stitch and my 4th. Okay, now we're going to do something different. We're going to push this down, and not quite to the end, but I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to now do E-wrap, knit stitch for the next pegs. This is creating the body of your panel. If it's a blanket, it's the body of it. Until I get to, okay, the end, I want to leave 4 pegs, 1, 2, 3, 4 for purl stitches. So here I have to do one more E wrap. Okay, now I've got 4 pegs left. I'm going to purl stitch these 4 remaining pegs. This one is a little tighter because I did not yarn over these pegs yet, so it's a little tighter here. I just have to pull it. 1, 2, 3. And yes, get that last one, push that up, get your yarn under and do your purl stitch. Okay, now go back and yarn over your E-wrap, knit stitch. Woo, that one pulled really far. I'll adjust a little bit by pulling that one. They usually work themselves out. Okay, that's the remaining E-wrap. Okay, here. And now we're back to where I did the purl at the beginning. All right, now we are going to repeat that again, pushing this down. Okay, we're going back to the, skip the first one, the E-wrap. You always do the first row of the E-wrap. Okay, yarn over all of them. The purl stitch there creates a little bit of tightness as you're trying to pull over. Don't think you're doing anything wrong. That is natural, especially with the chunkier yarn and the fuzzy yarn, the chenille yarn. Okay, that was the E-wrap all the way. When I'm going to the right, keeping that up. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do that 4-peg purl stitch again. Skip that first one. There's 1, here's 2. There's 3, and here's 4. Again, it helps to have that little tick mark on your loom, so you don't have to keep going back and counting and things like that. All right, then push down your yarn, E-wrap until we get to the 5th peg out, or whatever you decide for the project that you're working on. I would not do less than 4 with anything that you're working on. Otherwise, it's kind of what's the point. And let me count. 1, there's my first peg. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gotta take 2 off. I'm gonna count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I wrapped it up to the 5th one. And then here I have to attach my yarn. Push these up, and we're gonna do purl stitch for the 4 pegs. Definitely is tight, that first one. Two, 3. Last one. 4. And yeah, it is definitely time to take that anchor yarn off. Pull it off your starter. You could have pulled it off sooner. I just wanted to keep going. Okay, having a hard time grabbing it. Let's go from this side. Pull it off, and you want to make sure that you untie that single knot. Whoa, that does not want to come off. There we go. You want to untie this because as you're working, it might tighten. You do not want a knot in the tail here that you're going to have to weave through to hide that tail. Yeah, this is called chenille. Very difficult to pull apart because of the stickiness of it, and it actually disappears in itself. It's hard to decipher where the stitch actually is. Okay, no knot. Pull it through. That needs to get out of the way. And okay, so now go back to do your knit over of your E-wrap knit stitch. And so I've just created a border on both sides. And I'm going to end there and move on now to the, let's just say I did this whole thing and I've got about 16 inches worth of rows here. Pushing that down. Now I'm going to finish it. So however many rows you did of this garter stitch, meaning knit, purl, okay? Knit, purl is 1 garter. Knit, purl is 2 garters. This is the inside, the back side of your work. This is the front side of your work. Here's the border from here to here, and here's your knit stitches. Okay, you can see how it's developing. You'll also, as this goes, you'll be able to see the border here on the side too. It's really cute. All right, so now I'm gonna do 2 rows of the garter to finish that off. So we're gonna E-wrap. I wanna get a lot of yarn here because I'm gonna kind of cruise along. All right, E-wrap, 1 whole row. The one thing about loom knitting is your yarn, it's like no matter what side you put it on, it always seems to, like you got to move things around a lot because it will catch on stuff or it's underneath. And the last peg, hold it down so it doesn't unravel, and yarn over that entire row. Again, I do have a beginner video for the E-wrap cast on and the E-wrap stitches. That's slower, explains it a lot slower. This one I'm kind of moving along a little bit quicker because the whole point was to do that border with the purl stitch. Okay, that row is done. I'm gonna leave that up. Now we're gonna do, this is garter stitch. Now I'm on the bottom or the top edge. Okay, this whole row is going to be purl. Okay, I want to skip that first peg and move on to the second and purl stitch this whole row. Oh, that one did not want to pull. There we go. Now imagine doing this on a 41 peg loom, or how about the infinity loom, the Afghan loom, 200 pegs later, especially with the purl stitch. Yeah, don't start with a huge Afghan. You want to practice this a few times to get the gist and the groove. Figure out how the yarn works, your hook, before you pull out the infinity loom and you're going to make a king size Afghan. I do not recommend it, especially with this border, because mainly if you make a mistake, it's really hard to fix on a loom. If you miss a loop, or I don't know, there's various things that can happen. You get to row 80 and you make a mistake. I mean, that could happen anyway, even if you've been doing it for 10 years. Either way, take your time, really kind of know what you're doing, be really comfortable with it before you start a huge project. Even doing pillow covers is really fun. It's kind of a, you know, one step down from making your throw, let alone a full-size blanket. All right, we are down to the last peg. Got to get that one back up there. Don't forget about that last one. Purl it. There we go. Now, oh, that, I don't know, for some reason this middle one here likes to pop off. Interesting. Glad I saw that. Okay. We're going to do one more row of the garter. So again, we're going to E-wrap the first row. So just doing this, watching it, you know, this in its entirety, you can kind of calculate how long a project will take you. Moving in a moderate speed here, nothing too fancy. And there we go. Let me get some yarn here. And now I want to finish my last row of my garter. So I'm going to do my purl. So after I did my last row of purl, that was it for my garter stitch border. Then what I did next was I did the E-wrap cast off. That is explained in another video, it's a very beginner video. I go real slow explaining the whole thing. And in doing that with this yarn, because it's so sticky, it took quite a while. So I edited that out, because I was really excited to show you the end product. All right, so here is the cast on border, and then here's the garter, the border, with my cast off E-wrap stitch. Okay, like I said, I have that in my other video that explains it, and it's easier to see even with the white yarn that I used. This one was just taking quite a bit of time, so I just cut that out. You can also see the border on the edge here. This is the side, and it's the same width as my beginning border, and it's border here. So inside here is my E-wrap knit stitch. It's real nice. So this is the front, here's the back. You can see how flat this is. It is so cute. You can have it on either side, doesn't matter. And then, like, even when you go to fold it, the corners are nice and square. There's no curling. It gives it a nice fold. So it's a really, really cute thing. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave those. Also, like, subscribe, share my videos. I have a lot more coming, and so far these are all just videos of stitches and different projects. No stitches for different projects, but no projects just yet. Those are coming later. All right, you guys, good luck, have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.